Hello and welcome to QServe FAQfriday. I am Stephanie Huang from QServe Group China office. When we are supporting the clients on product China registration, a frequently asked question is, as a foreign manufacturer, can we use the clinical data collected out of China directly for China submission, or if a local clinical investigation will be required? To answer this question, in 2018, China Health Regulatory Authority (NMPA) published a technical guidance for the acceptance of overseas clinical trial data of medical devices to promote innovation and to reduce the repetitive studies. The guidance number 13 officially announced the authority's acceptance of foreign data for China registration. All the Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices and IVD products are covered in the scope of this guidance, including the high-risk implanted Class 3 medical devices, which require NMPA clinical approval prior to the study. A note here is, if the applicant is using the study data completely from their overseas sites, then they do not need to file an approval with NMPA anymore. However, if the applicant is using the data partly from their overseas sites and partly from their Chinese sites, then approval from NMPA is still required prior to the initiation of the study. The guidance number 13 also lays out three important principles from ethical, legal, and scientific aspects. The ethical principle requires the trial to follow the Helsinki Declaration and receive the Ethics Committee approval from the study's location. If the data has been collected without EC approval, they cannot be used for China submission. For foreign companies, some ethical opinions may not come from a committee established in the site, but from an independent institutional review board or central EC, which are also acceptable in China. In some cases, the applicant may not clearly declare that they follow the Helsinki Declaration, but comply with the regional harmonized standards. In such a situation, they need to compare the regional ones with Helsinki article, item by item, and reach a conclusion of Helsinki conformity. The legal principle requires the study carried out conforming to China GCP or under clinical quality management control, such as ISO 14155. As ISO 14155 is a globally accepted quality standard, many global companies following this practice. However, ISO 14155 indeed have some differences with China GCP, such as the definition of a multi-center study, inadequacy of medical devices, medical device-related adverse events, the role of CRO, and the clinical data monitoring, etc. The applicant should be able to explain these deviations, if applicable, and prove they do not affect the study's results on authenticity, scientificity, reliability, and traceability, and can protect the rights and interests of the subjects. The NMPA acceptance baseline is the applicant adopted control is not lower than China GCP requirements and can justify the identified gaps. The scientific principle requires the study design is reasonable, the study purpose is appropriate, and the risks of involved persons are well protected. In China, the design of the study should consider the published device-specific technical guidance, which specifies details such as evaluation methodology, primary and secondary endpoints, or minimum numbers of subjects. For example, multiple endpoints may be requested for certain devices instead of a single endpoint to demonstrate both safety and effectiveness of the product, or the required clinical follow-up time is longer or more frequent than that of other countries. If not meet the guidance, reasonable justifications and evidences should be provided. For innovative devices which have no internationally accepted endpoints, it is recommended to discuss the study plan sufficiently with the reviewer upfront. Subjects-related factors should also be taken into account. The race differences or elements associated with China's social environment, natural environment and cultures, religious belief and medical compliances, etc. Clinical conditions in China may be different than that in Europe or the United States. Diagnosis and treatment concepts, performance criteria, investigator skills and knowledge on how to use the device, and assessment for treatment effectiveness may also affect the design of the study. If the existing overseas data cannot fully justify these factors, do not have clinical significance, a new study or supplementary study might be required. Additional study can be international multi-center study, including Chinese sites, or only conducted in China or overseas. No matter which route is chosen, the same study protocol and the same statistical method should be implemented, and to avoid central effect if new sites are added. How to design a study for China regulatory purpose. The applicant may refer further to medical device clinical trial design guidelines or the design guidelines for IVD products. The documentations required in the submission files include clinical trial plan, signed version of ethical approvals, study agreement between the sponsor and the sites, and full clinical trial report. Report data should be provided without screening. The applicant cannot use abstracts or selected paragraphs, but include complete data analysis and conclusions. In some cases, if the study is not sponsored by the applicant, it may be difficult to obtain the full report. In summary, the acceptance of the data depends more on the design of the study, not on the data origins. The reviewers will focus on China guidance compliance the study, reasonable risk-benefit ratio analysis, and a clear study conclusion. Both pre-market and post-market are acceptable. Prospective and retrospective studies are also acceptable if conforming to 3 basic principles. The overseas sites should be open and available to accept NMPA flyover inspections. Should you have any further questions regarding China clinical requirements or regarding China registration, you are always welcome to leave us a message or contact us directly. Thank you.